We are entering the fourth turning, and the events of today feel a lot like 1929.
A financial crash, which had just happened after a period of massive excess. And then you had the collapsing of institutions. You had a very slow rebuilding.
Global tensions are at the brink, with conflict raging on in Iran, the president of a nation being removed and captured, the United States threatening to take over Greenland. It doesn't feel like tensions could be any higher. Meanwhile, domestically in the United States, wealth inequality continues to rise. Billionaires continue to leverage their wealth and power to accumulate more wealth, like Bezos and Bill Gates buying precious property in Greenland. Like 1929, we have people concerned about the unlimited power and lack of accountability with the Federal Reserve. The infighting is happening at the highest levels between Jerome Powell and the Department of Justice. The banking establishment and the global central banking cartel are banding together to get Jay Powell's back. And like 1929, we have a choice to let the Fed run rampant, or we can recognize our failures from the past.
The major villain in the Great Depression was, in my opinion, unquestionably, the Federal Reserve System.
I called the Fed the engine of inequality.
Will we be doomed to repeat the same mistakes of the past, or will we realize that we need to build a better future? One built on Bitcoin. Today, we're going to examine what you should be doing with your portfolio in the fourth turning, and how you can position yourself to benefit no matter what regime change comes in next. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go.
The hardest thing, Matt, actually, has been to convince people that the changes that are happening are significant enough that you really need to sit down and re-examine everything. But the kind of change we're talking about is the kind of change that happens once every 80 to 100 years.
We're living in extraordinary times. As Grant Williams puts it, these are times that make you rethink everything. Periods of change that only come along every 80 to 100 years. And this is what's described as the fourth turning. The system that was created after a former collapse gets so big and so corrupt that a new system has to be created after the old one is burned down. There's certain generations that are alive and are coming of age during these periods, and millennials just happen to be one of them. People believe that the consistent theme between all of the problems that we've had since 1907 till today has been the Fed. Here's an interview in 2012 with Thomas Massie having a debate about the short-term benefits of the Fed having tools in order to combat inequality in a future Great Depression for the inequality in the Great Depression that we just live with all of the time because of the Fed.
This is Mr. Massie. Mr. Atkins' opinion on auditing the Federal Reserve. Mr. Massie?
I think the Federal Reserve absolutely needs to be audited. How one person can decide to print $40 billion a month while Congress is arguing about where to cut $50 billion in a year escapes me. They've really exceeded any kind of constitutional authority that they should be given. And by devaluing, by destroying our currency, which is what ultimately will happen given the policies of the Federal Reserve, this will affect the middle and low income classes in our country more than it will any other class.
Mr. Atkins?
The Fed is a tool that's used by government to manipulate our economy so as to keep us from going into depression. Look back at the TARP bailout. As onerous as it was to do that, that was $1 trillion granted to Wall Street to keep the economy from slipping into the Great Depression. The Great Depression, too. We were looking square into the eyes of the Great Depression, too, in September through January of 2008, 2009. Without those tools, that's where we would be. It's counterproductive to remove a tool from our toolbox that will save this country from such a financial catastrophe.
Mr. Massie?
That tool is going to destroy our country. And it's interesting to hear my opponent promote Keynesian economics in this debate because, that the theory behind Keynesian economics is that it is the government's role to manipulate our currency, to provide for cheap credit, to print excess money. And I believe that it's fundamentally broken. It's flawed. That theory doesn't work. And the government shouldn't be setting the price of money.
Mr. Atkins?
How can one man and 12 unelected officials have to say over the price of money and the cost of living for 8 billion people globally? Well, Milton Friedman takes us down memory lane. Let's go back to the beginning.
I've long been in favor of abolishing it. I think there is no institution in the United States that has such a high public standing and such a poor record of performance. The Federal Reserve System was established in 1914, started operation in 1914. It presided over a doubling of prices during World War I. It produced a major collapse in 1929 21, it had a good period from about 1922 to about 28. Then it undertook actions which led to a recession in 1929 and 30, and it converted that recession by its actions into the Great Depression. The major villain in the Great Depression was, in my opinion, unquestionably, the Federal Reserve System. Since that time, it presided over a doubling of prices during World War II. It financed the inflation of the 1970s. On the whole, it has a very poor record. It's done far more harm than good.
For many years, the Fed has been overlooked and not held accountable for its actions. But this administration has taken a completely different tone and a different approach to making sure that the Fed has accountability. So with Jerome Powell saying that he was threatened by the president and by the administration, well, there are people on the inside that disagree, like U.S. Attorney Perot. She said that the United States Attorney's Office has contacted the Fed several times, asking for them to have discussions about the cost overruns with the new Fed building renovation. Seems reasonable, but they didn't respond to any of the outreaches, thinking that they were above the law, despite what Jerome Powell says. Billions of taxpayer dollars being misallocated should warrant a discussion. And after he gave this speech a couple nights ago, well, a global coordinated PR and press campaign came out from other global central bankers. It's like they banded together immediately. They all got on the phone. They all had conversations. They said, "We stand with Jerome Powell." This doesn't seem like independent actors acting alone, but a global mafia in a coordinated attempt to control the price of money and the cost of living for citizens around the globe. Not even a day later, articles and press releases come out saying that the global central bankers all stand in full solidarity with Jerome Powell. Even Lloyd Blankfein came out, one of the headline heads of the banks from the global financial crisis, saying trying to kill the Fed's independence by criminal investigation is not good for that institution and maybe even worse for the Justice Department. Feels like an attempt at blank blank, which we can't say because of YouTube. That's interesting because he's the one that benefited directly from U.S. taxpayer dollars bailing out his bank when his bank was collapsing during the global financial crisis in 2008. And this is why people believe, like Balaji, that the Western society and civilization is on the brink of collapse. This Keynesian experiment will end worse than the Soviet communism experiment. People's assets will be inflated to zero. Money will be stolen. People's wealth will be taxed away. And that's why there is no trust in the system.
How money is built on trust. But the reality is society is built on trust. You know, you have to have trust for society to function. Without it, it just doesn't work. And so at any point when trust is in decline, you are going to see the kind of problems we're seeing. And like I said, there isn't an event that can restore trust.
Grant Williams says that there's no event that can restore trust. It's a process. I disagree. I believe that it's a protocol. I believe that it starts with sound money, having just weights and balances in the system. Before we head to where I believe that you should position your portfolio as we head into the fourth turning, well, let's thank our sponsors. Ledn has been the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans since 2018, issuing almost $10 billion worth of loans to tens of thousands of customers across the globe without losing a single cent or sat of customer money. What they allow you to do is to unlock liquidity in your Bitcoin without selling your Bitcoin. As Bitcoin appreciates, well, you can borrow against it in fiat dollars, which are going to zero against the value of Bitcoin. You can borrow up to 50% loan to value, and the fiat hits your account in less than 6 hours, and the application takes just 2 minutes. Loans start at 12.5%. They can be repaid anytime. You can top up your Bitcoin balance and never repay your loan. And all of this can be done seamlessly and simply through the dashboard and platform. Go to learn.ledn.ao/simply to get started. One of the ways you can avoid the communism collapse that Balaji is talking about is by removing your assets from the system. Bitcoin allows you to do that, to have this synthetic digital asset that can be transported around the globe anywhere to anyone at any time at the speed of light, but you need the private key in order to do that sovereignly. Coaches at the Bitcoin Way will help you to do that. They'll help you how to learn to take self-custody of your Bitcoin by removing it from exchanges so that you can be prepared if a day like this happens. Back to our episode.
You know, if you look back from 1980 to 2020, we had rising stock prices, rising bond prices, rising house prices, falling rates, falling inflation, globalization. We had the biggest tailwinds the world has ever seen. And so I gave a presentation on this last year, and if you go back through that period of time, you sit here today and say, well, until 2020, it was actually quite difficult not to make money. You'd have to make a ton of consistently poor decisions over and over again to not make money. And if you just put your money into assets and stepped away and never bought a phone and never bought a newspaper and just came back 40 years later, you were a gajillionaire. That's changed. We don't have rising bond prices, rising house prices, rising stock prices, or at least if we do, the trajectory has shallowed massively. The volatility is coming back, and there's a very strong chance that some of these things are going to start to fall. We've certainly seen higher inflation. We've certainly seen rates go up, and they tend to lead. So that environment has changed. And if that environment has changed, and not just changed, but reversed, what went down went up, it stands to reason that if for 40 years the default has been to make money, and all you had to do was be there and stay out the way, if everything's reversed, it stands to reason that the next 40 years can be really hard to make money. And you can't just have your money in the markets. You need to make decisions and be out at the right time and understand that markets can go sideways for 20-year periods in nominal terms. So the investment style that served you very, very well for 40 years, the one that has been ingrained in you over and over again, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip, has worked. But I don't think that's going to work in the next 10 years and possibly not in the next 20.
We are in a massive regime change. The tactics that worked before, like buy the dip, always buy the market, well, those things are no longer going to exist. We've had a 40-year run of interest rates going down, inflation going down, globalism happening. It's been really hard to lose money the past 40 years. But over the next 20, it's going to be really hard to make money if you're still operating in the current system. And what's going to happen is this K-shaped economy is going to continue to diverge. It's going to continue to get worse and worse between the haves and the have-nots. And there needs to be a money and opportunity for people to close that gap, or revolt and populism will happen. And that's why I love this clip from Jordy Visser. He says the thing out loud that we've all been thinking. We need something. The lower to middle class needs something in order to outpace the amount of debasement that's happening to them. And that's why Bitcoin is the perfect asset during the fourth turning.
K-shaped economy. Okay, well, how many people are in the K, on the bottom level of the K, and how many people in the top level? It's getting very heavy on the bottom level, especially when you do it relative to the size of this. And so I think whenever that's happened in history, there's ended up being a revolution of some sort. I think technology is the democratizing thing of that. And that's just my belief. It could change. Something could go on. But the reason I believe in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin should accelerate into either scenario that plays out, because the growing number of people on the bottom end of the K do not feel like they're part of the system. And this is the part of the fourth turning that, if people haven't spent time, it's about losing trust. So the University of Michigan consumer sentiment, to me, has a reflection of losing trust and hope in the economy. So Bitcoin is a trustless thing. It was set up first to deal with the fact I don't trust the banks. Well, now we're past the banks. I don't trust my employer. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the banks. I don't trust the currency. I don't trust the debt. I don't trust anything. And so I don't see how you all of a sudden get the trust back. And if you read The Fourth Turning, there needs to be an event. Well, I think AI is that event.
You need to start to position for a future of collapsing supply chains, of global distrust, a multipolar world, growing populism in the United States. So you should load up on commodities, hard assets, and have assets that are both inside and outside of the system. You need to be able to benefit from the money printer turning on, but also benefit from the inevitable collapse of the current system. Bitcoin gives you the best optionality and upside on both sides. You can both remove your money and your wealth from the system while also benefiting from the money creation that's going to happen at the end of this cycle. Don't miss an opportunity to have both your foot in and out at the same time. It's a great risk-reward trade, and it's something you should be positioning your portfolio towards as we grow in a world of more distrust of other countries and other nations, more distrust of our institutions. Go into a trustless money and a trustless protocol that you can trust because the rules aren't changing. They're embedded in code. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, do so. We drop alpha and fire content like this every single day of the week. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. And Before I say happy stacking and let you go, one of the ways you can continue on your Bitcoin journey is by buying a state-of-the-art Bitcoin mining machine. Don't worry if you don't know what that means or you don't understand it. Basically, it's rental property in cyberspace that's operated by a property manager called SAS Mining, who has no middlemen, no markups, no contracts, and your uptime or your vacancy rate with these machines is well over 95%, and you get sats that flow straight to your wallet. Use the QR code on the screen to get started with SAS Mining today. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.